Section 2.4.2 SCOTUS. Move to Conservatism. Hello, I'm Dr. Adam McKee, and today we're exploring the shift towards conservatism in the Supreme Court during the 1970s and beyond, a key topic from my book, Criminal Justice, an overview of the system. We'll discuss how the composition of the court changed under Republican presidents and the impact this had on criminal justice policies. Let's get started. During the 1970s, the composition of the Supreme Court began to change, and the pendulum swung back towards conservatism. Republican presidents like Nixon, Reagan, and Bush replaced retiring liberal justices, and by the end of the first Bush administration, the court had shifted from the liberal Warren Court to a more conservative body. This new court created many exceptions to the protections established by the Warren Court, expanding lawful investigative activities for law enforcement. This change was not limited to the courts but also extended to the executive and legislative branches. The Burger Court served from 1969 to 1986 and was known for its more conservative ideology than its predecessor, the Warren Court. However, despite the presence of Chief Justice Warren Burger, a conservative justice appointed by Nixon, the court did not become decisively conservative, as there was no conservative majority. In many respects, the Burger Court was transitional, serving as a bridge between the Warren Court and the more conservative Rehnquist Court that followed it. While Burger was a conservative, he did not have the support of a majority of like-minded justices, and as a result, the court maintained many of the Warren Court's liberal doctrines. For example, the court continued to uphold the exclusionary rule, which prohibited using illegally obtained evidence in criminal trials, and to protect individual rights in other ways. However, the Burger Court did chip away at some of the Warren Court's doctrines, creating new exceptions and limitations that narrowed the scope of existing protections. One of the most controversial cases of the Burger Court was Furman v. Georgia, 1972, which abolished the death penalty as it was then applied. In a 5-4 decision, the court held that the arbitrary and capricious application of the death penalty constituted cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the Eighth Amendment. Although Burger was a conservative, he joined with the 4 liberal justices to form the majority in this case. This decision was seen as a significant departure from the traditional conservative approach to criminal justice, which favored strict sentencing and punishment. In Gregg v. Georgia, 1976, the court revisited the death penalty issue, and Burger voted with the majority to reinstate it in a 7-2 decision. However, this decision did not signal a shift in the court's overall ideology, as the majority opinion was carefully crafted to address the concerns raised in Furman and to limit the circumstances in which the death penalty could be imposed. The court established a bifurcated sentencing process, in which juries would determine guilt or innocence and decide whether to impose the death penalty based on aggravating and mitigating circumstances. The Burger Court also dealt with other important issues related to criminal justice, such as the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. In United States v. Ross, 1982, the court upheld the warrantless search of a car stopped by police because police had probable cause to believe that the vehicle contained evidence of a crime. This decision was seen as a victory for law enforcement, as it expanded the scope of permissible warrantless searches. The Burger Court was a transitional period in the Supreme Court's history, bridging the gap between the more liberal Warren Court and the more conservative Rehnquist Court. While a conservative justice led the court, it did not have a conservative majority, and as a result, it maintained many of the Warren Court's liberal doctrines. Nonetheless, the Burger Court did chip away at some of these doctrines, creating new exceptions and limitations that narrowed the scope of existing protections. The court dealt with many important issues related to criminal justice, such as the death penalty and the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. Its decisions continue to influence legal thinking and practice today. The Rehnquist Court, led by Chief Justice William Rehnquist from 1986 to 2005, was marked by a conservative ideology that differed significantly from the liberalism of the Warren Court. While the Burger Court that preceded it was also conservative, the Rehnquist Court was much more so, with a clear conservative majority. This majority was primarily due to the appointments made by Republican Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, who were able to shift the balance of the court away from the more liberal rulings of the past. Chief Justice Rehnquist was a strong proponent of states' rights and believed that the proper balance of power between the federal government and the states had been upset by the liberal interpretations of the Warren Court. He was particularly critical of the court's broad view of the 14th Amendment, which had been used to strike down various state laws that the Warren Court deemed discriminatory or unfair. In contrast, Rehnquist believed that the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause should be applied narrowly and that the court should generally defer to the states on matters of social policy. To this end, the Rehnquist court created numerous exclusions that chipped away at the liberal decisions of the Warren Court. These exclusions were intended to limit the scope of federal power and to allow states to make their own decisions on issues such as criminal justice and civil rights. One example of this chipping away is Maryland v. Garrison, 1987, which held that a search pursuant to a warrant that the police believed incorrectly to be valid did not violate the searched person's Fourth Amendment rights. This decision created a good faith exception to the exclusionary rule, which had previously required the suppression of all evidence obtained due to an unconstitutional search or seizure. This exception allowed evidence to be admitted at trial if the police had acted in good faith, even if their actions violated the Constitution. Another example of the Rehnquist court's conservative ideology is California v. Greenwood, 1988, which ruled that a warrant was unnecessary to search a garbage can left on the curb for pickup. This decision was based on the court's view that people do not have a reasonable expectation of privacy in items that they have discarded and that the police are, therefore, free to search such items without a warrant. This ruling was widely criticized by civil libertarians, who argued that it undermined the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. These exclusions and limitations on federal power were celebrated by conservatives, who saw them as strengthening the police's ability to do their job and promoting law and order. Liberals, on the other hand, mourned these decisions as eroding hard-won civil liberties and creating a legal system that was less protective of individual rights. Despite this ideological divide, it is essential to note that the Rehnquist court's decisions were not necessarily aligned with the political affiliations of the judges or the presidents who appointed them. Instead, they reflected a particular interpretation of the Constitution and the role of the federal government espoused by the conservative legal movement of the time. So, why is this topic so important? Understanding the shift towards conservatism in the Supreme Court helps us appreciate the dynamic nature of judicial interpretation and its impact on criminal justice policies. It highlights the influence of political ideologies on the court's decisions and the balance between protecting individual rights and promoting law and order. In summary, the shift towards conservatism in the Supreme Court during the 1970s and beyond was marked by the appointments of conservative justices by Republican presidents. The Burger Court served as a transitional period, maintaining many of the Warren Court's liberal doctrines while creating new exceptions and limitations. The Rehnquist Court further solidified a conservative ideology, focusing on states' rights and limiting federal power. These changes continue to influence the criminal justice system and legal thinking today. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover, leave them in the comments below. See you next time.